Hello everyone, my name is June. I'm a plant and gardening content writer living in Lagos. I write about plants and gardening for my website, Plants in Tropical Spaces. When I'm not writing, I'm in my garden, honing my horticultural skills or making videos like this. My aim is to inspire DIY gardening culture in my community. So today I'd like to show you my outdoor garden. In a previous episode, I showed you my indoor garden. I'd like to show you how this all started. So let's go. Okay, so here we are. This is my outdoor garden. This is where my indoor garden initially spilled out into. The reason is when I got plants for the indoor space, I really wanted to have plants just to beautify my home. In 2019, I just wanted to have plants inside the house. But then I realized that the plants weren't doing so well, even though I was told they were indoor plants. And so some of them died, and then I started paying more attention. I brought the plants out. I realized they wanted shade. I used to have a tree here, a cypress Thujas here, so that provided shade. So I would put the plants out here and be able to observe them from the kitchen. And then gradually I started having more plants here. Now, let me describe this space to you. It's about 11 o'clock now in the morning, and the sun is in the east. So this garden is actually faces east, but then it's in the shade of this tall building. The house is actually on 3 floors. So throughout the morning, the house provides a shade for the plants, and that's what the plants need. So because most of my plants are shade-loving aroids, I have a few begonias, ferns, calatheas, but they're all shade-loving plants, so they really want to be in the shade, and that's what they love, philodendrons. So the problem I have is later in the day, about midday, when the sun is overhead, I need some shade, and I have provided that shade with this shade cloth. So by evening, afternoon, 2 o'clock, the sun is on the west, and then the wall provides the shade for the plants. So that's how this garden is set up. It was really accidental. I didn't plan this. This just happened, and I just went along with it. So another interesting thing about this garden is that it's on concrete. All my plants are in pots, containers. Everything is on concrete. That's how the house came when we moved in here. There's a lot of water at the back, so it made sense to have this floor on concrete rather than soil, because then the soil would absorb water and make the whole place really messy. But that is something I put into consideration as well when putting plants here. So some of the plants are in terracotta pots, and for instance, I have this calathea in a terracotta pot, and it's just against the ground, so that the terracotta pot absorbs moisture from the ground throughout, so it just keeps it moist. All the plants, I don't know how many plants are in here. At some point I'm going to have to come and sort out the plants. There's a tendency to have plants like this, Homanumella rubescens. It has now really outgrown this space, and it's covering up other plants here. So I have to come, either take it out, put it somewhere else, or cut it back so that the other plants can have access to light. These plants, what interesting thing about plants too is that you can get expensive plants and you get cheap plants, basic plants. These golden pothos, I have golden pothos in this space growing from only 2 containers. One from a big bucket in water and another one from a small container. But then it's spread here out of control. The neon pothos as well, I wish they'll climb the wall and they're just spreading. The kind of plants I like to collect. Oh, by the way, this ZZ plant, Zamioculcas zamifolia, it's actually meant to be indoors. I brought it out to water it, and then the rain fell on it, so I have to leave it out to drain properly before I take it back indoors, otherwise it will rot. Okay, so some of the plants I have here that I find quite interesting, Alocasias. By the way, I'm not going to go into all the plants one after the other, that will take forever, but I just want to highlight a few. So Alocasias, I have Alocasias here because I like the way the foliage faces me, right? And when I'm busy in the kitchen, I just like to look out here and see this plant. So I have the Alocasia longiloba, the stingray, Yucatan princess, the Amazonica. We're just coming out of the dry season, and one thing I noticed about my Alocasias was that some of them died back. So I have a few. I think I have a dragon scale that's just coming back up. I have a poly that's also just coming back up, but these are the ones that remain. I find that if you want to do collect Alocasias, or well, if you would like to have one Alocasia at least, I think you should have the Amazonica. I've had an Amazonica for about 3 years now, and it's always been in season. This is the Alocasia Freedeck. It's spider mite prone. I have just one leaf left, but I'm not worried because as long as the stem is alive, the plant will continue to grow. So I just have to keep watching out for pests. Okay, so over here I have a bird's nest fern, Asplenium nidus, and the Syngonium mojito, meant to be climbing the wall. It's actually meant to look like this, and well, that's how I got it. But then it seems as it's aging, the leaves are turning more green. And that's a disappointment you get with variegated plants sometimes. This is another interesting plant, Schismatoglottis. Very nice pattern to it. So what I get plants for, I really try, what I'm attracted to the plants for are the leaf shapes and patterns, colors. I'm not excited by flowers. I mean, I like flowering plants, but then I feel that when plants are not flowering, I have to be looking at something. So it's mostly the leaf shape, the leaf pattern, leaf color. That's what got me really interested in plants and gardening. So I don't have just ornamental plants. I know that Nigerians like to ask, what do you have what edible things do you have in your garden? So I have a few vegetables. I have spinach, and it's very easy to grow, really. Basically, get cuttings or seeds. I mean, I often give to visitors to my garden spinach cuttings or seedlings. I mean, it's so easy. So I grow them in buckets. So that's it. I mean, basically, there's really no excuse not to have a small garden in your house, no matter how the spaces. You could have buckets. So I have with a water leaf. I have some herbs, and then I have lemongrass. If you like tea, you might like Earl Grey tea, and that's a flavor of tea that has a citrus flavor, and lemongrass gives me that Earl Grey flavor. So I use this in my tea, and it's growing in a grow bag. Also aloe vera growing in a bucket. Not very impressive, but it's there. So I would like to show you my Monstera. I planted this Monstera cotton maybe about just over a year ago, and yesterday I noticed that it was flowering. So come, let's go look at it. Okay, so I was quite pleased to see it. I don't think the mother plant is flowering yet. I will check that. Sometimes I have so much going on in this garden, I don't remember to see everything. Okay, so yeah, so I have a few plants here. The asparagus fern, sansevieras, yeah. Okay, so we're now moving to another section of my garden, and this is an interesting part of the garden. It's north facing, which means it is in the shade or has been in the shade for several months now, and you would see how the plants have been affected by that. Plants like sunlight, even shade plants like sunlight, filtered light, not too much light, but a bit of light. Now when the plants are constantly in the shade, they start to lose their variegation, like this peace lilies over here. They're actually the variegated peace lily, and if you come closer you would see there's a hint of variegation here. It's meant to be really white, but then because of the shade the plant stopped making its variegated leaves and it just turned to making only the green leaves for chlorophyll. I mean, part of it is my fault. I could trim these trees, but I will get around to it. This is the mother plant, I think, of that Monstera that I was telling you about. Okay, so at some point I'm going to trim this. So the thing about the north-facing gardens is that at the time of the year, from about October till February, the position of the sun is such that the house casts a shadow on the north side because the sun is more on the south side. So you might have heard things about south facing, north facing, and the rest of it. The good news is that we're coming to the time of the year now, from March till about September, when the sun was going to be more on the north side, and you know, so the plants will get more light. They'll be protected by the trees, so they will get filtered light during the course of the year. So from that period, it may actually get very bad. I mean, so last year I had plants on this shelf that really got burnt because of the light. I didn't move the plants in time, you know, especially in the evenings when the sun is setting. The intensity of the sunlight is so harsh that it actually burnt my plants that were here. So I'm trying to restock this shelf and trying to be careful as well that I catch it in time so that I don't have these casualties. Okay, so there's one other thing I wanted to show you. It's this syngonium. It's Syngonium auritum. I think that's the species name. It doesn't look much like a syngonium. When I posted it on Instagram, people thought it was a philodendron, but I later found out the species name, and I believe it's auritum. I'll post that on the screen. So it's an interesting pattern. It's quite big, you know, and then the leaves are actually thick and sort of glossy. Okay, so in this area here, what's here? A papyrus grass or plant. Yeah, I'm going to have to trim this soon. Something interesting here as well. So what I try to do is I work with my environment, you know, so I try as much as possible to work with plants, work with materials that I have available. So I have these trees. So when we moved into this property about 8 years ago, the only thing that was planted here were these cypress thujas, and then the whole of the ground was concreted. So I have these trees providing a nice shade, and they're also providing some structure for me to hang plants. I like to see plants growing as much as possible close to how they grow in nature. So I have a staghorn fern here on a stump. Okay, so I got this tree stump from somebody, and I thought, what could I do with it? You know, I want to have something interesting. So I got the staghorn fern, Platycerium bifurcatum. Yeah, so I tied it up to the tree stump. So it's been growing there for about 2 years now. Unfortunately, I think some snails ate it. If not, it was growing so beautifully earlier. But it's picking up. Yeah, because it's also been in the shade, it hadn't grown very much until now. But then the sunlight is coming back and it's growing. Also, this cryptanthus, I just tied it in a bit of coconut husk and just put it there. With the rains coming back, it would also pick up. It's looking a bit dehydrated now, but it will be fine. So here, what I have here, I just have this discarded bookshelf. I decided to put some plants here. This wasn't planned at all. And when it rains, the rain doesn't get to this place, so that really puts me in a dilemma, because whenever it rains, I feel I don't have to water my plants, and then I forget about these ones. I mean, it happens year in, year out. I have this begonia maculata struggling. It was such a beautiful plant when I first got it, but there's signs of life, so I'm hoping it comes back. I don't know why begonias struggle. Some of them are so easygoing. The cane type of begonias actually are easier to deal with, and the maculata is a cane type, so I'm surprised. This is a cane begonia. I don't know the particular species name of this one, but I have this growing in so many places in the garden because it's just so easy. Just pluck it and it's rooting in water. So yeah, so what I do with this space is like put some small plants, things I'm propagating. Yeah, so what I try to do here, just to take advantage of the materials I have, the trees providing the shade, filtered sunlight, I also use them to hang my plants. So I have this bird's nest fern growing in a pot. I just hung it up with a rope, a string here, and then making use of and reusing materials. So I made this basket out of this netting that you get from the supermarket. When you buy stuff from the supermarket, you get this netting. So I just put a bit of coconut husks, some compost, and then planted this crested bird's nest fern. It's different from this. They look similar, but they're different genus. This is a Microsorum diversifolium, I think, while this is Asplenium nidus. So I have lots of that going around in the garden, vertical things growing here. So I use the same method here for this Stradescantia. Okay, and then make some hanging baskets out of some plastic containers there. Then this is something interesting as well. I like ferns, and I like to have them growing in their natural habitats as well. And so ferns need a lot of moisture, a lot of aeration in the media as well. So I thought I could get away with having this fern. This is a kangaroo paw fern. I put it in this metal casing that you have for fans. So I just put a bit of coconut fiber and then put the fern in, and it's been growing there for over a year now. The thing about this is because of the light. I mean, this was so bushy last year. Sometime later in the year when there's more light here, this is going to be really bushy and covering the path. Then something interesting here as well, making use of local materials. I planted this fern. It's called the lemon button fern. I don't remember the botanical name right now, but I'll put it up on the screen. I planted it in a mortar, so there's no drainage hole, just the standard Nigerian mortar, and it takes a lot of water anyway, so I just keep throwing water into it. Okay, so what's interesting about this area? Just ferns, begonias, yeah, and yeah, hanging plants, hanging in different parts. And this is one of the footed ferns. Is I used to call it a rabbit's foot fern, but it might not be rabbit's foot because the rabbit's foot has whiter rhizomes, but it's the Davelia genus. You would come in and look at the rhizomes. They actually have hairs on the rhizomes that resemble an animal's feet. Okay, so yeah, over here I have this patch of grass that the estate management planted and put those palms. Okay, so I just took out all the grass and decided to put plants in pots in this place. So what do I have here? This is an orchid, a Phalaenopsis orchid. This is the second Phalaenopsis orchid that I have had. And so I bought this flowering, and when it stopped, I used it indoors for about 2 months, and then when it stopped flowering, I just brought it out, bought another one, and that's what I intend to do with orchids. Phalaenopsis orchids, I am told, are the only ones that would flower indoors, so most other orchids need more light. And I know that because I have lots of orchid lovers around me. The interesting thing about gardening is that, at least for me, I realize that I don't have to have all the plants that I like. I have friends who have plants that I can see. So I have friends whose gardens I'm going to show you sometime soon who have hundreds of orchids. So if you're an orchid lover, stay tuned. Okay, so let's talk about this place. What do I have here that's interesting? I have anthuriums. So I have this is an anthurium, and the interesting thing about it is that I'm growing it in charcoal, just charcoal and a bit of compost. So that's me making use of the material that I have available, and it's doing quite well. The flowers are pink, so this flower is actually spent and new flowers will come out. I'm really going to enjoy this place when the rains start. The caladiums, they keep dying back and coming back, but that's fine. So the interesting thing also about this place is the bromeliads that I hung up on the tree. So I just wrapped the roots up because bromeliads naturally grow on trees. They're epiphytes, you know, so they can grow on trees or they can grow on the ground. These bilbergias, they grow a lot. I mean, they are quite prolific. I think I bought one and then someone gave me one. And when they flower, they are supposed to die, but they don't quite die. I actually have one that has been dying for the past 2 years and bringing out babies. Still bringing out babies. So what I do is just separate the babies. So I had so many of them and just thought, you know what, wrap it up in coconut husk and nail them to the tree. So I have a video demonstration of that on my Instagram feed, so you can look that up. So it's flowering. I just hung this up a few months ago, sometime late last year, maybe about September or so, and I'm so pleased to see that it's now flowering. So I'm just going to leave them there. The only pest problem I have with bromeliads are snails. I mean, when the snails get to them, they really look terrible, so I'm going to try and avoid that happening. Otherwise, they're fine. They'll take care of themselves. I don't need to feed them. I just drop water into the tank here to water it, and then when the rain comes, it takes care of everything. You don't have to worry. Okay, so next stop, here I have ferns. I like ferns a lot. Interestingly, this Boston fern is one of the first few plants I got when I started gardening in 2019, and I tried to grow it indoors because there's that perception that ferns like dark places, and that's not true. They actually like bright places, not direct sunlight, but bright light. So it's doing better out here. I like the lush feeling that ferns give to a space. When it has a lot of direct light, like this is getting direct light right now, it tends to bleach the fronds, so they tend to start looking white. So the best conditions for your fern is a shaded spot in the garden. Okay, so this is something interesting. Like I said, I like to experiment with epiphytic plants. I have a syngonium growing here epiphytically. It's not attached to soil in any way. It wasn't deliberate. I actually had it growing in a container down here, and then it started to climb, and I yanked off the container one day, and that was it. And then this part was still attached, and so I just sprayed down, and it's growing. It just feels good to have something there. So more ferns here, more ferns. This is quite a wild fern. And then this stand, I just want to talk a bit about this stand and why I have this stand. So I thought at first that I would just have a few plants, so I got this stand to put some plants on so that I could have them rotate with the plants indoors, you know. And of course, that's like anybody who has a garden or who loves plants has experienced. It just goes out of control. So my gardening and my plant collection was no longer limited to this stand. And I think that I introduced this idea of a plant stand over the AC, at least in my neighborhood. I have about 4 of my neighbors doing the exact same thing, and it's nice. It's good to share. That's it. So yeah, so this is the last stage of this store. What do I have here? Some plants in pots and stands. Yeah, I thought this was an interesting idea to have this layered stand and then have some plants that trail, like the spider plants with the babies just trailing down. This philodendron, heteroecium, Hartley philodendron, it's been growing. I have it in so many places. I mean, it's quite interesting to see growing. It's actually growing from a very small pot, but it's just spread all over the place. I think the challenge will be to try and keep my visitors from stepping on my plants. Let's see how that goes. Okay, yeah, so this it's a Dracena. I had it as a very small plant. You know, I'm afraid to see what the roots look like because I really can't afford to even pot this now. It grew as a very small plant. I got this in 2019, one of the first few plants I started gardening with. I like this. It's I think it's Dracena marginata, something magic dragon. I can't remember the feature. Okay, so some of these plants here in this area belongs to my neighbor. I mean, she's such a lovely person, and she actually started gardening before me, but then during COVID, when we started gardening together some more, I mean, everybody just sort of picked up doing more things. And this citrus tree, I keep forgetting the name, but I will put it on the screen. It's a nice citrus fruit which I use for tea. I use the rind for my tea and then use the pulp for some juice. She planted it. It wasn't fruiting, and she was going to cut it down way back in 2020. No, I think it was 2021 or so. She was going to cut it down, and I pleaded on its behalf, and here we go. 2 years later, it's been fruiting almost continuously, you know. So, but then she just wanted the satisfaction of having this tree, but I'm the one deriving the satisfaction of eating from the tree. So there we have come to the end of my tour, and I hope that you have found this interesting, perhaps inspiring. And like I said, my plan is to inspire new DIY gardens. So please subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram at Plants in Tropical Spaces, read my blog where I write about house plants in tropical conditions. I write from my experience. I talk about how I've grown the plants, and the care tips I give are tips that I have tried out myself. So please read, like, and share. And thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you very much. Bye.